So you ever find yourself playing through a game and you're really enjoying it, but something's not coming together? And that something is the story, the characters, the plot, maybe even the world itself. Maybe it's even the dialogue or the writing. You're having a great time with this game. You're really enjoying the gameplay. It's got rewarding, addicting, engaging gameplay loops, but whenever the story shows up, things start to grow south. You start turning a little green, and it's not because you're becoming the Hulk, it's because the story sucks. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. 10 great games where you're not playing them for the story. The story is the weakest element of the game overall. For this list, I'm going to exclude older games. I feel like that's low-hanging fruit, and I want to challenge, damn it. This list is in no particular order, and it's all based off of my own personal experiences. What I think might be a crummy story or poorly written dialogue or less than stellar world building might actually be pretty good to you. So let me know down below if you agree or disagree, and name some games of your own. I'd love to get a discussion going. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Got the Patreon, the super thanks. All the support is truly greatly appreciated. Hype the video, whatever the hell that means. We even got a drama-free gaming Discord. All the links will be down below. I truly appreciate everyone. Seriously, every single person who's even made it to this part of the video. I really do appreciate you. So with that, enough dilly-dallying around. Let's get to the games. Now, when thinking of games that I really enjoyed that didn't have very good stories, one that came to mind pretty quick was Middle-earth: Shadow of War, the Lord of the Rings game. Now, funny enough, I thought the first game, Shadow of Mordor, didn't have the worst story. It wasn't great by any means, but it was decent enough. It was serviceable, but Shadow of War, yeah, they just kind of lost the plot here. The writing, the characters, the motivation, it all just goes completely off rails, and it feels more like a bad Lord of the Rings fan fiction than an official story by Warner Brothers, and of course the late great Monolith Productions. And the further you get through the game, the worse the story honestly becomes. The last part of the game just barely makes any sense, and feels just more slapped together than anything else. The main character, Talion, isn't the most unlikable, he's just not that exciting either. He was more exciting in the first game. And Celebrimbor, well, he's just more unlikable than interesting in this game. The less said about the story of Shadow of War, the better. You know what's really great about Shadow of War, though? Everything else. Well, outside of the grindy endgame bullshit that's needed to get the true ending. The rest of the game, though, oh, it's pretty awesome. It's genuinely one of the best open world games of this era. The combat is way better than what it was in Shadow of War. The Nemesis system is on full effect, and there's really never been another game to utilize a system like this, and there probably won't be for some time because Warner Brothers really did trademark the system, and now no other game company can use it. Thanks, capitalism. Actually halting innovation. You love to see it. But at the very least, we have this game using it, and it's pretty awesome. I love how all of the enemies remember you, and they all very much play off each other. You also get your own war chiefs, which was kinda in the first one, but here it's like a major gameplay element. You have tons of your own war chiefs, they're playing off each other. It leads to a very lived-in, alive, open world, where things are just constantly happening, and I found the core moment-to-moment gameplay to just become kind of addicting. Like, I wanted to get as many war chiefs as I could, I wanted to take out as many orcs as I could, and I wanted to do, like, everything. I spent well over 30 hours in this one and very much enjoyed it, but you know what I didn't enjoy, like, at all? The story, the characters, the writing, the dialogue. Yeah, I was fully compelled by the gameplay loops here. And the story, that shit might as well not even have existed. I was so disconnected from it. But I think it's a really great example of how incredibly polished gameplay can make up for a lackluster story, characters, writing, dialogue, etc. And so here we have Borderlands 3, which I think is another perfect example of a great game with a terrible story. I'll just immediately say it, Borderlands 3 has some of the worst writing and dialogue you will find in any video game. It's not the worst of the Borderlands series, that's definitely new tales from the Borderlands, but this isn't much better. They really just crap the mattress here, and I'm not talking about a few little turds here and there, no, I'm talking full-on diarrhea. It soaks the mattress, it's dripping onto the floor. The only way to get rid of this is, honestly, throwing it into a dumpster and burning it. Like, that is how bad they fucked up the writing, story, characters, and dialogue in this game. You know it's bad when one of the top mods for the PC version just basically removes all of the dialogue. That is how unlikable these characters are. That is how detestable this story is. And I mean, yeah, I really don't have like any positive things to say about it, especially as a longtime Borderlands fan. I feel like they went out of their way to make all of the likable, lovable characters from the previous games as unlikable as possible. They just straight up neutered all of the characters from Tales from the Borderlands, and even some series mainstays like Lilith and Brick aren't that likable. And then the main antagonists, the twins, they were just horrible. And not because they're good antagonists and you really love to hate them, it was more like, get the fuck off the screen. The less you're on screen, the better. Truly, some of the worst antagonists of any video game. And so you might be going, and the game's somehow good? Yeah, pretty much everything outside of that is actually pretty good. I do have some small grievances here and there, like the more open areas and the user interface, but the gunplay is really solid. I think the loot and drop rate is actually really addicting and rewarding. You're constantly getting just awesome guns. Yeah, it does give you a bunch of legendaries, and some people don't like that, but I really had a lot of fun getting tons of legendaries. There's a bunch of good quests here, and I thought the pacing was pretty decent throughout. The gunplay is just straight up better than what Borderlands 2 had. And there's actually a number of gameplay tweaks from Borderlands 2 and quality of life improvements that make the game actually pretty enjoyable, at least when you're actually playing it. And you know, not watching one of its god-awful cutscenes or having a terrible conversation with a character that has essentially just been crushed down into a Reddit joke or two. Man, I still can just not get over how bad the story is in Borderlands 3. I will give some credit where credit is due though. Gearbox definitely course corrected after this. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has much better writing, and Borderlands 4 is arguably the best of the entire series. This really is just a Borderlands 3 issue. I think the game is good, I think it has plenty of great things about it, but I'm pretty sure most people will agree that the story, characters, and all that, ugh. And so here we have the Chinese mega hit from 2024 with Black Myth Wukong. Yeah, I don't think the story is very good in this one. I will say that the Chinese mythology it's based off of is incredibly fascinating, and the world itself is actually pretty cool. There are so many unique monsters and creatures that I would love to learn more about, but the actual plot of Black Myth Wukong isn't very good, and at times it doesn't make like any sense at all. And if you go, oh, if you know the original story, it makes perfect sense. Well, I shouldn't have to know the original story. The game should do a decent enough job when it comes to its storytelling so that I can kind of understand what's happening. I barely understand what the fuck is happening. The first cutscene absolutely makes sense, and I really do understand what's happening here, but after that, you kinda lost me. I guess it's about this monkey who's a descendant of Sun Wukong, and he's trying to become like the next Sun Wukong. He's also mute. Like, genuinely, you got me. I don't think the storytelling is very good, it doesn't provide enough context, and I just had a hard time getting connected to any of the characters, especially our main character. He's just a mute monkey that has literally no personality whatsoever. A brick on the ground has more intrigue and personality than our main character, because when you see the brick on the ground, you're probably like, oh, where did this come from? What's its purpose? What's it doing? With our main character, I just was not invested whatsoever. And I'm not saying I need it spelled out to me like I'm a goo goo gaga baby drooling all over the place and I just shit on the floor, but maybe a little more context, maybe some more flavor text, something, anything at all would have been helpful. But you know, outside of the game's lackluster story, writing, and general plot, I think the gameplay is actually pretty good. It's a mix of a hack and slash and Souls-like, and it's got some of the best bosses you'll find in any game from the last few years. There are so many great fights in this game. I think the combat actually has a decent amount of depth. I like the different stances. The game looks absolutely incredible, and while the level design might be less than bussin', the game certainly makes up for it with lots of really cool set pieces. I still enjoyed my time with Black Myth Wukong. I've never been massive on this game. I'm not going to say that it's a straight alpha like some people have, and that's because the story is just one word to me: no. So for this entry, I don't just have one game or two games or three games, I actually have four, and that is the entire Just Cause series. From the original all the way to the latest title with Just Cause 4, I think this entire series just has bad stories. And it's kind of funny how throughout the years, the storylines, the characters, the dialogue, and the writing in general just never got any better. I'm not going to say it ever got any worse either, it was just kind of at this baseline of bad, and it's always stuck there. It's also not so bad that it's awful, where I want to like mute the TV or turn the game off when the cutscenes roll up. It's more like it's just really bad, cheesy B-movie storylines and stereotypes where you just kind of roll your eyes. And you're like, okay, it's pretty clear here, the story really doesn't matter. But then Just Cause 2, 3, and 4 actually have plenty of cutscenes with characters, and there's lots of dialogue. and it's unfortunately just never very good. These games' stories are like the opposite of imaginative, and it's pretty obvious to me that it's practically impossible for this series to get away from any tropes. It's just very clearly not the focus, but then they still put effort in it as well. Thankfully, while I think the story, characters, and writing might not be very good, the gameplay of Just Cause has always been pretty good. Sure, that original game is pretty janky, but Just Cause 2, 3, and even 4 have pretty solid gameplay. Just Cause 3 in particular has some of my favorite gameplay from that era. And I remember actually 100%ing the game. Like, I went and blew everything up, I did all of the challenges, and I had an absolute blast. Flying around, blowing everything up in Just Cause is always going to be a great time. This game is at its best when it's like a Michael Bay movie, when you're just blowing everything up, there's explosions left and right, and you're annihilating everything in sight. Sure, these games are rough around the edges, especially when it comes to the driving and the physics at times, but they totally nailed that B-movie action atmosphere and gameplay. So while these games might falter in one key area, I promise you they excel in pretty much every other area. And so here we have the latest game on the list, a game actually from 2025 with the first Berserker Khazan. I feel like I could have just about every Souls-like on this list, but the one that I'm specifically singling out is Khazan because I just absolutely love this game. If you know me, then you know that I absolutely adore the first Berserker Khazan. Khazan is my homie, I love him to okay, I'm being sarcastic here if you couldn't tell. This game absolutely pissed me the fuck off thanks to being stupidly difficult. This is like one of the hardest games I've ever beaten in my entire life. But still, despite the difficulty, I can say that this is actually pretty good and one of the better Souls-likes to come out in the last few years. But you know what isn't very good about it? The story, the characters, and really just the plot in general. I was actually really intrigued by the story since it's connected to Dungeon Fighter Online, and I don't really know much about that, and I was hoping this game could be like a little bit of a gateway into that world, and no, it absolutely wasn't. I was also really curious to learn more about Khazan, his backstory, and why he was being exiled, and the game goes over that, and they do actually explain everything to the player, but unfortunately, the explanation isn't very good, exciting, and it's certainly not creative or imaginative. It's like the most generic, obvious, predictable reasons that you could think of. The game also tries to have some really big plot twists throughout the game, and these just fall so flat that Parappa the Rappa and all of his friends have more dimension than this game's story. Like, it just sucks. Khazan barely feels like a character here, and Ben Starr is just completely wasted as Khazan. I wanted to learn more about him. I wanted to know everything I possibly could, and the game gives you some of it, but it was just not exciting, and I felt extremely indifferent to the story overall. And by the time I got to the end of the game, I was like, oh, thank God it's over. This game is so fucking difficult. But I also, again, just could not care about what was going on. Outside of the story and the characters, I think this is actually a pretty decent Souls-like. I think the combat is actually really good. It's fast, it's rewarding, and it actually feels really good. The game looks nice, and there's plenty of great boss fights. The game is stupidly difficult. Like, genuinely, this is a very challenging game. I know there's been some patches to address the difficulty and make it a bit more accessible, which is good because it just did not need to be this difficult. But man, when you beat some of these bosses, it genuinely is extremely rewarding. Like when you beat Viper, the third boss in the game, like holy shit, I felt like $1 million when I beat it on stream. So I can say at the very least it does pull that out of you. But if you're gonna play this game, it's certainly not for the story, and it's most certainly not for Khazan. So for this one, I got a double creature feature with Mirror's Edge and Mirror's Edge Catalyst. I know a lot of people don't care for Catalyst, but I actually quite enjoy it. I very much enjoy both Mirror's Edge games, but you know what I can definitively say is that I think both of these games have pretty crummy stories, which is a real shame. They're just not all that well written, exciting. I don't think the characters are fully fleshed out, and I want to learn all about Faith. I want to love this character and really get invested into this world, but by the end of both of these games, I just could not care what was happening. Unfortunately, I just found both stories to be rather dull and actually pretty generic, which is a real shame. And if we're going to be 100-100 here, I actually had to look up what even happens in the story before I recorded this video. Like, the storylines were just that forgettable to me that I could not remember like a single thing. Then after looking it up, it all started to come back to me, and I remember how I felt when I finished both of these games, where I was like, you know, the gameplay was pretty solid, there's a lot of fun parkouring here, but the story, the characters, all that, who cares? I feel like the story and Faith as a character is actually just really missed potential. That's what this feels like more than anything else. and I feel like it could have been so much more. And I think a lot of people wanted Catalyst's story to be so much more, but it ended up being just as forgettable as the first game. Outside of the story though, these games have some straight aura. Like, I think both of these games are some of the best parkouring games of all time. The first game is extremely linear and has some of the best level design from any first-person game from the late 2000s. The second game is an open world adventure, and I actually think the open world is pretty decent, and the game controls a lot better than the first one also. The parkouring actually feels really good, and sure, your objectives aren't very exciting, they're not really exciting in either of the games, but the core moment-to-moment gameplay is so engaging that it really makes up for that. Sure, there is combat that shows up in both of these games, and it's pretty bad in both of them, but that's not the focus. The focus really is all about the parkour, the movement, the feel, and I think they nailed it in that sense. Both of these games are really fun, and I've had several hours of fun with both of them, dozens even. But you know what certainly didn't provide me endless hours of fun? The stories, because these, just forget them. So here we got another newer one that is kind of like a Souls-like with Stellar Blade. Now, I was really intrigued about this game's story before it came out. I was like, wow, this seems pretty cool. Eve actually seems like a pretty cool character outside of being wildly attractive, and it reminds me a lot of Nier Automatapiya, where the world is just ravaged and it's kind of a wasteland and robots are being sent down. But then Stellar Blade decides to do its own thing with the story and divert away from Automata, and yeah, it's pretty bad. I don't think it's a bit of a hot take to say that Stellar Blade doesn't have a very good story. Everything from the plot, to the writing, to the progression, to the characters, to just the overall dialogue and tone just feels so off in this game. It never comes together in a satisfying way, and it all just really failed to impress me, engage me, or get me all that invested. It's also like wildly predictable. I'm not somebody that sits there and tries to predict stories. I usually try to avoid predicting stories because I want to just be caught off guard and I want the story to be impactful, but even I was able to see where this game was going from a mile away, and it really was as predictable as it seemed. And I was just like, come on man, this is so lame. The story is so generic, forgettable, and well, less than stellar. Pun absolutely intended. Like Mirror's Edge, this game's story just feels like missed potential, and Eve herself is missed potential. She has basically no personality outside of being cute, and it could have been so much more. Coulda, shoulda, woulda out here. But you know, outside of the story, I think the game is actually still pretty good. Like Black Myth Wukong, while the level design leaves a little bit to be desired, the combat is actually really solid. It has one of the most satisfying fun parries of any video game that I've played. Like, it feels amazing. The combat in general actually feels amazing. They really nailed the feel on this one. It's all satisfying, it's weighty, and it's a good mix of Souls-like and hack and slash combat. There's plenty of great bosses here. There's actually a lot of memorable moments and set pieces. The music is amazing in this game, and sometimes the game looks really nice too. I feel like they actually cooked when it comes to a few aspects of this game, and you know, they were probably cooking for the story as well. Unfortunately, it just became some burnt, dried up, tasteless, sour piece of ash by the end of it. Yeah, you can absolutely tell they were cooking, but you don't want what's on the menu. I'm certain they're making a Stellar Blade 2, they've all but confirmed it, and I'm hoping the story is better, please. It wouldn't exactly be hard now, would it? So for this one, I don't just have one game, two game, three game. No, I've actually got an entire series of games on here, and that is the Sniper Elite series. Now, I love the Sniper Elite games. Pretty much all of these games are straight gas, they are fire, and some of them, dare I say, even go foolish. But something that I think everybody can agree on is that the stories in these games are just not very good. They're like the most soulless, generic, uninspired World War II stories imaginable. Yes, they are all historically accurate and they set up some really cool set pieces to snipe people in, but that doesn't mean that they're very good. There's just not much here to comment on, especially when it comes to the main character, Carl Fairburn. Like, he has about as much personality as a paper bag. Like, what the fuck do you expect me to say about this? It exists, it's right in front of me, and I can just walk away and forget that it ever even existed. Outside of that, these games sure have writing in it, and dialogue. I definitely can't deny that. Doesn't mean I remember a single line of either though. And you know, I was really hoping with the zombie army games that maybe they'd go a bit more nuts with the story, maybe get a bit more creative, or really lean into the campiness. And while it definitely does lean into the campiness, and I think the stories are more interesting than the mainline series, it still isn't very good. But let's be honest here, how many people are playing a Sniper Elite game for the story? You're probably playing this because you really enjoy the Sniper Elite gameplay. You want to snipe some fools, and when it comes to sniping in a video game, I don't think it gets any better than Sniper Elite. And as the series is continued, the sniping has only gotten better and better. The games have low-key gotten better and better. The sniping has become so customizable. You can make it this really quick arcadey experience, or you can make it more simulated and real than even real life, where it would probably be easier to shoot a bullet through a Cheerio than beat some of these games on the hardest difficulty. But I also really enjoy that. It leads to a very tailored experience. All of the snipers feel incredible, they all behave differently, and there are tons of great levels and set pieces. Like, there are so many amazing moments in the Sniper Elite series where you're just blowing shit up or you're taking fools out. And the X-ray kill cams, oh, they are something special. They've only gotten better and gorier as the series has gone on. Like when you blast a guy in the testicles. Try gooning again, I dare ya. And there are some really excellent levels. In the later games, you can even have people invade you like it's Dark Souls or something, and this is actually a whole lot of fun also. Pretty much everything is good about the game, except the stories. So yeah, they're very much worth playing, but you can skip all the cutscenes. And speaking of skipping all of the cutscenes, we have the original Dying Light. Now, I love Dying Light. Genuinely, it's one of those games that I would give my highest recommendation. And it's truly one of the greatest zombie games ever made. It has a wonderful open world, the parkour feels great, even better than Mirror's Edge in many aspects. The melee combat is some of the best of any video game. And the whole concept of the light dying, air quotes, where nighttime is really scary and you can get fucked up is actually very well implemented here, much more than Dying Light 2. Realistically, we could sit here and glaze Dying Light all day, but you know what I'm never going to glaze about Dying Light? The story and its main character, Kyle Crane. The story is just so generic. It is so forgettable and predictable, and it has like every zombie trope imaginable. You already know what's going to happen. You know how everything is going to play out, and at times the plot feels like a parody. It's so obvious what's going to happen. I'm like, please come up with an original idea, anything, something. Jonathan, do something. Well, I can't. I'm sorry. All I can tell you is to just skip the cutscenes. There's no memorable characters here. There's very little of note, and the tweaker hiding behind the Jack-in-the-Box at 3 AM is probably spouting more original things than this game's plot. Actually, to be fair, it would probably be pretty difficult to be more original than whatever that fentanyl fiend is saying. The point I'm trying to make here is, forget the story of Dying Light. It's just not very good, no matter how much they focus on it, because they do focus on it quite a bit. There is a fair amount of cutscenes here, there's a number of characters, there's a bunch of dialogue, and it just doesn't get any better the further you get through the game. It just becomes more predictable. But trust me, the rest of the game is great. Funny enough, Dying Light 2, I remember seeing they were going to focus on the story, and I was like, oh no, this isn't going to be very good. And no, it's not. It's arguably worse than the originals, but I don't have Dying Light 2 on here because I don't think it's a great game. I think the first game is way better. Dying Light the Beast probably has the best story of the entire series, and I can't even say the story's very good in that one either, but it's actually compelling, unlike the original. Look, at the end of the day, it's clear that Techland's strength is not in its writing, storytelling, or characters. Its strengths are in the parkouring, the open world, and especially the melee combat, which is why you play these games anyway. So for this next entry, not 1 game, 2 game, 3 game, no, I just have the entire mainline Monster Hunter series. I wouldn't say that any of these games have a particularly bad story. They're just incredibly basic, shallow, and rather forgettable. Can you tell me any of the stories to any of the Monster Hunter games? I'm waiting, and that's because I sure couldn't tell you any of the stories to pretty much any of them. I did think Monster Hunter Wilds has the best story of them all, and it actually was a little bit better than just serviceable, but even then that's not really saying much. It's very obvious that the story never has been and never will be the focus of Monster Hunter, so much so that they actually have a spin-off series called Monster Hunter Stories, where it is all about the story, and it's actually pretty decent. But the mainline Monster Hunter games, yeah, the story, it exists, and that's about all I can say. I mean, do you give a shit about the Monster Hunter story, world, and lore? Probably not. You just probably want to go hunt some monsters and rip off one of their testicles or ass and use it as a piece of armor or something like that. I mean, Monster Hunter has some of the most addicting gameplay of any game. It has some really rewarding gameplay loops, and I think that just about every single game is pretty fun, from the older games to the newer games. Even if they've become more streamlined and are pretty different from what they originally were, I still think the gameplay is more than solid enough. Certainly more solid than these storylines provide, that's for damn sure. But anyway, that was 10 instances where I think the games are pretty great even if the story sucks. I had a lot of fun making this, so I'm definitely going to do a part 2. I'll probably also do an inverse where the gameplay sucks but the story is good. I'm going to do more soon. In the meantime, you all have yourself a swell day, and if you made it to this part of the video, you gotta tell me a game that came to mind when you saw this video. It can even be a game I mentioned here. You'll get a heart from me either way. See ya.